Here's Why, episode 8. So much fun, such fun topics. And I want to thank my guests for coming on. First and foremost, Michael Keene from Review Nation. Michael, how are you doing today?
Well, I just watched The Italian Job, so
and we will talk about that and your feelings here unto the regarding all those things. Of course, Michael is a reviewer. He's also a director, a producer. He's made special effects. He's an author. A lot of fun things on Michael's lists, and so he is a billionaire because he has all those lists of things on his resume. So thank you, Michael, for joining us. On the other side, Robin. Robin, thank you very much.
Am I second and not foremost?
Well, you are first and foremost. You're second, and then what's the foremost term for a secondary? Secondary? I guess you're secondary. Let's just say you're both here, and you're both equally important. Daddy loves you both. Let's just go with that. Robin, I want to thank you for coming. Robin, of course, from KUNR FM radio in Reno, robinholabird.com. And she is also an author. Lots of great stuff. You've actually traveled the state with your book, and you've had a lot of fun opportunities with it. Around the World in 80 Movies. I mean, there's so many fun things about you, too. And then also a member of the Las Vegas Film Critics Society. Robin, thank you for joining us.
Oh, it's always fun to be able to talk about movies.
Very much so. And that's why we're here. I wanted to have a show that is based on us nitpicking movies and fun things as opposed to all the horrible left, right, middle, behind sides that news has these days. And that's really one of my issues right now is I want to kind of get away from there. I want to have fun debate. I want to get away from all this insanity. So with that in mind, let's talk about the news and let's talk about all the fun things that are kind of on the top of everyone's mind when it comes to films as well as entertainment, TV, things like that too. So let's talk about Tenet is one of the things I want to kind of reach on a little bit right now. As both of you, Tenet, of course, is kind of where Hollywood is deciding if that is going to be the first movie to say we're okay to go back to theaters and we can make money again. July 17th, which seems so close and yet so far at the same time, is the release date. And we're going to be dealing with half full theaters. And the week after that is Mulan. So there's a lot of things riding on this release and the fact of it holding its date or not. I guess let's ask that question. Do you feel like Tenet is going to hold its date? Robin, let's start with you.
Hold its date. That's a tough one. I think they're going to give it every shot. It just depends on whether we actually get a second wave of Corona. I think that they're going to aim for that date and hold it. 50% theaters is going to be different, but I think it will sell out. Of course, it's Christopher Nolan, one of the most popular filmmakers of all time. People really waiting for this movie. It's a big screen movie. This is not a movie like Trolls World Tour that should be platformed out on video on demand. And of course, Trolls did very well. It made over $100 million. I think Tenet will do extremely well, and we're going to be talking about heist movies later. It comes from a guy who did one of the best heist movies of all times, Inception.
And that's one of the things that I'm looking at it for, of course, too. They also broadcast the trailer last night on Fortnite. So they're trying to get the younger audience for sure, hoping that they will, which actually seems to be the case. Like the younger audience still has that thing about being invincible and will live forever. So let's all go to a movie and we'll sit together. I've seen them in parks and groups, and they're looking for opportunities to group everywhere. So I don't want to promote it, and I don't want to give them my opinion on it necessarily. But it seems like that's something that they are definitely aiming for by releasing this new trailer on Fortnite. But it just may be a demographic ploy as well. Michael, what do you think about Tenet holding its date?
They're obviously really focused on getting it in theaters. I mean, that trailer, they very specifically say only in theaters. It's very pronounced. They dropped the date though on the trailer. They just have only in theaters because I think they're still, hedging their bets a bit. There is that chance that things go awry again, especially it's very easy into politics on this topic. I think that there's a chance that they could push it, but I think it's like a maybe 20% chance. I think the betting man's opinion would be that they keep the release date. I think that shows not only a lot of competence in the film, but also it makes it a bigger event than it normally would be. I think, Christopher, as Robin said, it's a big deal. It's a Chris Nolan movie. He's like the guy. And by making it the big release fresh out of this horrible pandemic, that's a smart move. They could actually, despite the limited amount of seating, wind up with more money than they would have otherwise, just because of how pronounced this event is.
I definitely agree. Go ahead, Robin.
Well, I think what's going to happen with it, obviously the first few shows will sell out. They always do on a big release, but this will have the legs. It will keep selling out for a perhaps longer than usual because people are desperate to get out. That's what's happening right now is parks, national parks, things like that are opening. People are flooding there. And the chance to get back and see a movie on a big screen again, that's going to be a big deal for a lot of us. I mean, there are millions of us who adore watching movies. And for our little group right here, I mean, how many times a week would you go to the theater to see a movie on a big screen? And how long has it been since you've seen a movie on the big screen? A long time. I'm ready.
No, I definitely agree. Tenet is going to be one of those ones that's going to set the bar. And the other thing about this is the fact that when it comes to these movies that are coming out and they're going to be the first in the line, they're going to have a longevity too. If we're only releasing 1 or 2 new movies a month, that means that those movies are going to be the new movies for at least a month or 5 weeks now. So before, when you had 2 weeks total, its next big competition is going to be Mulan after that. And I don't even know what anything out in August is going to be till Wonder Woman, any other big releases. So Tenet could have a 6-week run, a 7-week run, 8-week run, and still be constant throughout because of the release schedule and the fact that nothing else is pushing people to necessarily say, okay, well, that's already old. Let's go to the next one. So that's definitely something we have to look at. And it's very interesting with it. There's a lot of different things running around when it comes to this movie. I actually read that Christopher Nolan had, before all this happened, he had in his contract that he was the first one to get his money in and out. So for the producers to say, let's do it this way, let's see what happens, that first huge portion, like 20% of all the profits, is going directly to Christopher Nolan. So before they even make a dime, it's all going to him first, and which is it's an interesting contract, but he is Christopher Nolan. And of course, you can tell the quality of the movie already, so we know what we're going to get. So I'm very much looking forward to that. But I'm also looking at future things too, because we are looking at not only Tenet, but then we're looking at things as they transition from big screen to streaming, like Greyhound with Tom Hanks. This is one that just went to Apple TV Plus, and for Apple TV Plus to gobble this up, their previous one was The Banker with Samuel L. Jackson, which was a good title. It was Anthony Mackie, Samuel L. Jackson, but it's nothing compared to a Tom Hanks movie. So what do you think about movie companies right now transitioning and pulling big titles that could have been into theater and just saying, you know what, we're just going to bet on selling it to Apple TV or Netflix or to Amazon? Michael, any thought on that?
Well, I think for some of these, it's not as big of a risk, really. I don't, as great as Tom Hanks is, I don't think any of us were going, man, can't wait for Greyhound. That's the awards contender this year. I think that one of the reasons that stuff like movies like Trolls did so well is because of kind of the novelty of the whole situation. Obviously, streaming movies, buying movies digitally is not particularly anything new, but the idea that, we can't go to the theater anymore, and this is a film we would have seen in the theater, but now it's available right here, right now. It's one of those things that I feel like will probably wear off a bit. Obviously, the future of distribution is in that digital direction,
right?
But I don't know that it's going to be like every big digital release is going to get the same warm welcome. I don't know. I don't really have any fun contrarian opinions about this.
No, it's not about contrarian. This is really more just talking about it because, as we look at these titles, we have a lot of titles that are actually transitioning So we talk about the Lovebirds, which is just out today, actually on Netflix. This was one that was going to come out. We
Right.
were all also looking at which other one? My Spy, which was right on the edge, and I think that might have been the last movie I saw in a theater. Or I can't remember what the last movie I saw in a theater was, but but this might have been one of the ones. This one's going to Amazon, of course. And the other one, which I'm not even a fan of the movie because I love the book so much, is Artemis Fowl, which is coming to
Ugh.
Disney Plus, which I have posted many times how much I am not happy about what they've done with this movie because it just looks like kids Men in Black. It doesn't have the fantasy angle that I really wanted to have, and
Same.
I'm just not. I'm not excited. I'm actually going to be talking to the author soon, and I'm really struggling between being honest or being like hopeful and positive with him. Like, hey, they made a movie about your book. Let's hope that it more more Michael Crichton and less Percy Jackson or something. Like, I don't know what's going to be. So there's going to be something in there that I'm not really happy about when it comes to all this. So yeah, I guess I just wanted to bring up the fact that a lot of this is happening right now. Tenet is going to be the tent pole as to whether that's going to be the line in the sand. And that's when we shall pass into theaters, or if we are going to have to look for movies that aren't necessarily blockbusters, but still were larger titles being bought up and gobbled by Amazon, Netflix, and Disney Plus and the like as well. So
And of course, drive-ins have been open. There's a
right,
couple of drive-ins. It depends on your area and how the weather is. And the one that just opened this weekend, Trip to Greece, the Steve Coogan
right.
fourth in the series, had, I guess, a little bit of theatrical release, although it basically is opening as video on demand. And it's considered a feature film.
Right. Well, and then in actually here in Las Vegas, they had The Wretched, which actually went. It was a horror movie, and it went to some of the drive-ins as well. But the problem is the drive-ins are few and far between, and they aren't necessarily going to be putting up the numbers that anyone wants. It's just another option to have, which is great, and in this world of social distancing. But I don't know necessarily if that's going to be the case enough for people to do it. If there's a resurgence to drive-ins, fantastic. I would love to find it. I would love to find a way for technology to be even better with drive-ins too. But the low tech and the opportunity for distancing just kind of works there already. So we'll have to see. Like, there's a lot of things that are gonna shake out when it comes down to this. But I did want to bring it up and just kind of talk about that as we see not only Tenet but also other things, whether they're going to be gobbled up by streaming services or video on demand, and if the money is actually going to be there, because $20 is a lot if you are a single person buying one movie. But
Right.
if you are a mom who's buying Trolls and their kids are going to watch it 20 times in a row over 48 hours, well, then it makes sense. That's fine. It works out great. Kids love that. That's going to be fine. And the demographic is
Yeah.
also going to be something too.
I had that conversation with the distributors, $20 when if you're just by yourself at home watching a movie, that's a lot of money for a new release. The moms I know who did love Trolls, yeah, they had 6 kids watching it and they could watch it all weekend. So and this was a conversation going on before COVID. Netflix, of course, released Marriage Story and The Irishman and Roma, all awards bait movies that they didn't think had a big future in mass release theaters. So how do you roll this out and still make money?
Right. Well, and there's going to be a lot of other talk, and we're going to have this conversation later, because what if Amazon buys AMC? That changes the world, because now they can actually create not only their movies and they can dual release without any issue. Because what's going to happen? We own the top theater owner company, and now we can also stream, so we can hit on 5 different fronts at the same exact time, and we're not angry because all the money is going to us one way or the other. So that's something that's definitely going to come up as well. And then if that happens, what's going to happen to Regal Cinemas or Cineworld or Cineopolis or a bunch of other places too? Are they going to be bought up by Netflix and a bunch of other companies too? If that happens, then the rules change, because we no longer need the gentleman agreement of 3 months before a movie can come out on video on demand or rental. Now we just say we'll do what we want because we own it. We don't care. We don't need to be in your theaters. We own our theaters. We're fine. And so that's going to be an argument for sooner than we probably think, actually. So we'll definitely get into that. But let's move on. Let's go into some of the fun topics, some of the fun debates, and let's first talk about this man right here, this rough, rugged-looking gentleman right here. He's got the sweep, the hair. He's got that look of, I've made millions and millions and millions of dollars on the explosive nature of my films, Mr. Michael Bay. And one of the topics we are approaching today is Michael Bay a good director? Is he someone who, not necessarily something that is all massive, but he's massive blockbustery, but he's also someone who delivers something that people do enjoy, and that critically it is good as a director in that category. So Michael is over on one side saying, yes, Michael Bay is a good director. And Rob, you're just not a fan. You're not a fan of Michael Bay. You're not a fan of what he does. And you're just like, okay, well, maybe he's just throwing it on the wall and calling it art. Maybe he's duct taping it to a wall and we're like, it's art. And you're like, not so much. So let's go from there. Let's start on the negative side. Rob, can you tell me what is your issue with Michael Bay, and why is he not necessarily a good director in your eyes?
Well, he is a good director, technically, of action films. And besides writing books and doing reviews, I spent 21 years as one of Nevada's film commissioners, where my job was to help movie makers find locations here in the state and use them. So if Michael Bay wanted to make a movie in Nevada, we were thrilled. He always had huge budgets, hugely professional as well. Transformers, okay, not my favorite movie because I don't know. I wasn't a little kid who played with the toys. It's a whole bunch of over the top action figure types of things with very little human character development. It looks great. The scenes shot at Hoover Dam in Nevada were so well coordinated. It's not an easy location to use. Bay's team got military backing. They did everything exactly right to make that as good a shoot as possible. So from a professional film commissioner stand, Michael Bay is great. The looks of the film, the explosions, the effects, yeah, they're all wonderful. I just don't much care for the story because to me it has very little human character development. And I don't always need a human character. I'll go for a dog. But just people and cars I didn't really care about. And that tends to go through on all of his films for me. The characters are pretty cardboard, even though, granted, he gets some terrific actors or very professional people. Scarlett Johansson and Ewan McGregor for The Island, also in Nevada, using rhyolite. Hey, great, rhyolite. That's perfect to put on screen. So I love him about that. I just find a lack of humanity in his movies that I'll watch them. I'm not bored stiff in them, but I'm not very enthralled with them.
So you kind of feel that it's more about his choices than his actual expertise.
The story elements. To me, the weakest part of his movies are stories, and I'm actually a person who enjoys the story as well as all the technical. You got to have everything else behind it. He has everything else behind it, just not the story.
No, and that's something that a lot of people have. Michael Bay has been synonymous with explosions. We could add a huge element of story and subplot and different things here, or we could show Megan Fox riding a transformer into an explosive whatever, and that's what we're going to do instead. So go. So that's definitely one of the things that people have kind of marked onto his resume and to who he was as a director. But let's talk about the good nature of him and maybe some other thoughts on what he does deliver as a director. So, Michael, what are your thoughts?
Well, I think that, first off, this is obviously not really a debate over whether or not he knows what he's doing. I think Robin and I both agree that, as she said, on a technical side, he's fantastic. And I would go so far as to say that on the technical side, he shows what he is meant to be as a director. He is a visual director. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I don't think being purely about the visuals and kind of negating characters and story is necessarily a bad thing. Obviously, taste differ. That's a given. I mean, I just released a review where I said Night Train to Terror is a great movie. It's all a matter of taste. But if you look at let's say some more lauded filmmakers, let's go super artsy. Let's say Stan Brakhage or Jean-Luc Godard. These are filmmakers who I wouldn't say make films that are particularly strong in story department, especially Stan Brakhage. He has obviously no story because they're purely experimental. But people appreciate them for the either the technical aspects or how they approach style. I think, Godard's early work especially is brimming with style. I don't think that it's particularly smart from a story perspective. It plays with story. But at the end of the day, it's all about showing who that director is as an artist. And I think, in their time, well, less Stan Brakhage, but when Godard was first making his films, people weren't immediately just on board saying that's brilliant filmmaking. That's going to last forever. That's classic. No, they were frustrated because it wasn't your standard issue cinema. And with Michael Bay, I think that he is sort of the bros artist. He makes movies that are admittedly for a very sort of hyper masculine demographic. He makes things that are meant to be fun, but he does so with a style and a dedication and a technical prowess that very few filmmakers can replicate. We're going to talk about The Italian Job in a second. Yeah. I think F. Gary Gray is a really good director. I think he's made some stylish movies, but he often falls into this trap of making movies that are very kind of bland to look at. They're not bad technically. They're not all that great technically. They're just kind of, yeah, that's a movie. And then when Michael Bay comes into the picture, when he makes a movie, it's just brimming with what you would consider Bayisms. He has that dolly around shot that he uses all the time, most notably in Bad Boys. I think is the most famous use. And, I feel like a lot of people, and Robin didn't make this point, so she might completely agree with me. I don't know. But I think a lot of people, when they go after Michael Bay as not being a good director, they go after those Bayisms. They'll say that he always uses the same shots. He always uses, these big explosions, the same humor. I mean, Wes Anderson uses the same shots and same humor in all of his movies. Doesn't make him a bad director. Some would argue that those people are dumb, but it's, a director having a specific style and going for a specific tone. I think if they can consistently succeed at that, and I wouldn't say that all Michael Bay movies are great by any means, but if they can consistently succeed at creating that feel and that vibe, that's impressive to me. No matter how much money you throw at a director, it still takes a vision to create something like that. And at the end of the day, it's the director's job to put forth a vision and do so successfully. I think, 9 times out of 10, Michael Bay does that. And one last point, I think that when he does try to create some character moments, which is not very often, admittedly, he does succeed. I just think that he has a somewhat nihilistic standpoint on it. Pain and Gain is probably my favorite Michael Bay movie. It presents this very dark comedic character. I kind of screwed that up. Dark character comedy that is, presented as sort of this mean-spirited scenario that really, I think, brilliantly deconstructs the hyper-masculine bro attitude that he exploits in his films. They're not likable characters, but they're good characters. And I'll take that, especially over anything Godard's done recently.
Right. Well, the one thing I have to bring up, is it's almost like recently we talked about Terrence Malick. When you look at Badlands and some of the first films he did the regular way of creating characters and story and doing just showing that he can do all this stuff. But if you look at the last 10 to 15 years, he's gone off into Malick world and done everything like, here, your character is just thinking about an orange and now go. And so that's who he is. And so maybe it might be along the same line that Michael Bay is like, okay, you know what? I did show you, I did do some stuff, even though he started in music videos, really. You could go back and you could actually say, you know what? Maybe you didn't like this, but if you remember, I did make The Rock, which was a lot of fun. It was a blockbuster. It was definitely one of those ones that people did enjoy. And it was something that, as a storyline and as a fun blockbuster, it had some positives. I mean, Sean Connery could still lead a film on his own, in my opinion. And then, of course, we talk about Bad Boys. That's one of the first big, huge summer blockbusters that kind of defined the term, up there with Independence Day, Jurassic Park, things like that. Bad Boys 2, of course, he went along that train. And then from there, we can easily go into Armageddon, which, of course, unfortunately kind of unproves the point because we're sending drillers to space for some reason. Like, I don't know why we're doing that, but that's fine. Let's make that happen. We'll make some explosions. We'll give them a gun in space, too, because they need a huge gun on the moon. Why not? Let's make that happen. Let's bay it up. And so that's one of those things that I definitely kind of see that it falls definitely in Robin's category too, but make it to the point of Pain and Gain. I felt like that was one where he was trying to redeem himself by saying, hey, I can make a story. I can make characters. And I felt that more in that movie than any other previous things too, including Pearl Harbor, which was rife to have way more character development than it really did. Don't get me wrong. I'm sure Josh Hartnett and Ben Affleck really wanted to kind of expand that. But instead, let's just CG up a bunch of explosions and heroic moments and see what happens from there, And then, of course, recently we had Six Underground with Ryan Reynolds, which huge moneymaker. And that's the thing. He still makes money. He's delivering on what the category is that he has become. So I guess the question is, do we begrudge him for not trying to create the artwork? Or do we just say, we understand what you're doing. It's not necessarily the cup of tea I want to drink, but we'll show up for it, I guess, And I think that's
I'm in your latter category there. I don't begrudge what he does. As I said, the technology is brilliantly done with Pearl Harbor, which really lacked characters.
Yeah.
I remember reading that he said he got the idea. He had a dream of the view of the bomb falling. And that visual image inspired him to say, okay, I'm going to make a movie about Pearl Harbor. That's it. He started with a visual image and no story.
Yeah, and so, that unfortunately is kind of where he runs with a lot of stuff now. I mean, Six Underground recently on Netflix, huge moneymaker. But it was very simplistic. It could have just been the plot to a video game easily without all the extra. So it's just a shoot 'em up video game. Let's make this into a movie, and that's where we're gonna go. And that's kind of I think where we are kind of standing on this too. So he can be a good director. We have seen some good stuff from him in the past. It is flashy. It is very fast cut. But then again, he started in music videos, so are we surprised that that's kind of who he was all the time? It's not like we took off the Scooby-Doo mask and we're like, oh, it was you the whole time. It's always been the same guy. It's just that we've had it packaged differently. He did do some stuff with Pain and Gain and some other things too that did show us he does have the opportunity to create characters and to make even Oscar-worthy opportunities outside of visual effects and action categories of whatever Critics Society award show you're watching there. But yeah, I will say that I don't know. It's hard to go with this because he is serving his demographic, and the problem is if you're not one who lines into that demographic, you're not necessarily going to be happy with him as a whole. So I'm gonna say you're both right in this. As much as I want to say, yeah, because he is a good director. Yeah. Well, if I had to lean even just a little bit more, it probably would be towards Michael, just because he as a director he is delivering something. He's not a writer, so his choice and stuff might just be what's coming to him as well. Because it's not exactly like people are going, you know what, let's give him 1917 and we don't need Roger Deakins. Let's just use who he has on bass. We'll use that too. So that might be the case more than not. And don't get me wrong, when it comes to cinematography, I would love Roger Deakins to do everything, but he's not available all the time, even though I think he's pretty much available right now. But overall, he is still a good director for what he is delivering. Whether that is just movies in music video slash fast commercial form, um, it's up to us at this point to either pay for it and go to the theater or not. But in this blockbuster nature, we're all end up going to the Michael Bays, the Fast and the Furiouses, all these different things. We end up paying for the ticket. So if we pay for the ticket, it's no one's fault but our own at this point. So I think that's where
You
I'm
should
kind of.
know what you're getting. You should know what you're getting with a Michael Bay movie. And just one other sideline, we mentioned the bromance type of thing. They are pretty male dominated. You may have noticed I'm not a male.
Right.
So there is part of, at least half of my makeup is not really going to be drawn to what Michael Bay is all about.
Right.
But you're right. If I pay to go see a Michael Bay movie, I should know what I'm getting.
Yeah. I believe so, and that's just where we're gonna land on that one. He is a good director for his demographic and who he's delivering to. It's the same reason I'm not one of the many millions who are watching Hallmark Christmas starting in November all the way to January 1st, because that is not my demographic. That's not who I am, and also I'm not watching reality TV, which is a it's more female demographic, but there's a lot of males in there too, and I just don't enjoy that myself either. So I don't begrudge things that I don't like just because I don't like them. But we have to say that he does have the expertise and the opportunity. It's just that his choices are all Brussels sprouts to some people, and that's just going to be the way it is. So
that's most directors, I think. I think most. I'd actually one last point. I think that the best directors are going to be dividing audiences, because they tend to make strong decisions, and a strong decision is a sign of, I think, a good director. It's just sometimes those decisions don't work. I've made 2 movies that make very strong decisions, and a lot of people think, yeah, they don't work, right. And that's fine because it's not their cup of tea. Just like many things aren't my cup of tea, and I don't think you should begrudge a director, and not that Robin's being very even keeled and making good points, but I think a lot of people outside of this conversation will say very negative, almost like borderline character assassination things about any director, Chris Nolan even, because it just doesn't fit into their wheelhouse, and that's unfortunate. I think everyone should be more open-minded about artists and their work.
Yeah, no, I agree. There's a lot of ups and downs when it comes to choosing a director, and unfortunately, that director is all about their choices too. Because sometimes the movie you love them for was way out of their wheelhouse. They just said yes to it, and so the rest of their movies, you're like, what am I watching? You made this, you did this, and now I'm watching these other things that are really where your heart resides, and this is not what I want from you. And unfortunately, that's a problem. Sometimes you get attached the director, the story, or the production. People being brought into the world of Pirates of the Caribbean or some of those blockbustery things. Sometimes the machine's gonna run without the director really anyways. They just bring in a new warm body to kind of push the camera around from spot to spot. And then sometimes the director is someone who makes the actual happen. Whether the idea of Pearl Harbor and Michael Bay deciding that was going to be his next destiny was going to be a good choice, I guess it's going to be one to the ages. Or I guess now, if you want to rewatch it and decide for yourself, but
it's not very good.
It's really not. Let's just move on from there though. Let's talk about our You're Wrong, Here's Why topic. And this one is The Italian Job. 2003, let me just say 2003. We're not talking about Michael Keene here. 2003, Mark Wahlberg, and Charlize Theron, as well as some other the other cast of characters in this too. And this is one of those movies that kind of helped define the category for some people because of the fact there weren't a lot around that same area, and it had more of a younger, fun vibe than others we've seen before too. Actually, if you think about it, we hadn't had a real heist movie in a while. The last one, big one before this, would have been maybe Heat, I guess. Could have been one of the ones before this, would have defined the category, something along those lines. So let's talk about this. Let's go back here. So we're talking, is The Italian Job 2003 one of the best heist movies out there? Michael is saying no. And this is one of those things that matched up, because I sent a questionnaire out to ask, What do you consider? What is one of your favorites, or what is a good heist movie, and what is a bad heist movie? Michael actually said The Italian Job, and Robin said The Italian Job. So you are on both sides of the coin on this one. And that's what makes me happy to make it. It's an empty space on the where you have to fill in a blank space, and to think that movie and that title exactly makes me happy when those things match up. So Robin, let's go to you first, and let's talk about The Italian Job and why you think it's one of the best heist movies out there.
Well, I think I just had a lot of fun watching it, and I liked it because it went against the grain in a couple of areas, even though one of the elements I like is from the original 1969, I think, with Michael Keene. And that's the big hot muscle car is actually the Mini Cooper. And I just thought it was a fun use of a Mini Cooper, an unexpected car for a big heist job. Now, in the first Italian Job, the Mini Cooper was a choice because it was a very pro-British movie and it's a British car. Oddly enough, the Mini Cooper company wouldn't even provide cars for the movie. The movie had to pay for them. Now, the remake has, again, Mini Coopers, and it looks pretty much like an ad for the new model Mini Cooper. But I just thought it was fun the way they had them chasing through primarily Los Angeles in an element that continues from the original movie, and that's that the heist requires a traffic jam and coordinating a traffic jam. In the original, it's in the city of Turin in Italy. It's called The Italian Job, right? This remake is not really a remake. It's not even a reboot. It just has about 3 elements from the original movie. The Mini Cooper that I enjoy, the traffic element and gimmick to the robbery I thought looked good. And yeah, there's an Italian location. It's at the very beginning of the remake, and that's in Venice. I loved the shot you're showing now is an LA scene as a helicopter goes inside a garage and continues a chase. I thought it looked good. It maybe Michael Bay would have done something a whole lot flashier.
He kind of did already with 6 Underground.
It looked pretty good. And I love locations. You know, that you mentioned the title of the book I wrote, Around the World in 80 Movies.
Right.
That book actually has way more than 80 movies and way more than 80 locations. I loved the way Venice was used in the beginning of what I thought was a clever heist in which the gold falls through 2 ceilings into the water of Venice and then is then ferried out by scuba. So I thought it was fun and different. And I mentioned a part about not being male. I liked the fact that Charlize Theron's character had some actual things to do besides just look pretty. She plays the safecracker who's key to the element. In the original Italian Job, there's an actress, Maggie Bly, I think is her name, and she's a little stronger than some girl characters, but they send her off partway through the movie. She doesn't take part in the heist. So Charlize Theron's character is important to it. And so from a female perspective, I like that aspect of the movie. I find it fun. Do I think it's the greatest heist movie? Well, hey, Derek, when I entered your forum, I saw the question, and what's a heist movie? Oh, I liked The Italian Job. I think you can make arguments for other movies, but I still think Steve and I will be arguing because I actually had fun watching The Italian Job.
Well, and that's one of the things that is very interesting too, because like I said, it was a blank space, so it came to your mind. Well, and that's really where I want things to go. Is this comes to my mind as one that I can either love or I hate, and it's somewhere in a category. You pull a file folder of things I don't like in this category, and that was the title, and so that's kind of where I went here too. And then going back to Charlize too, you know, is it called? Is it the Bechdel test? Correct? Is that what it's called? Bechdel test. She necessarily wasn't about Mark Wahlberg, essentially. It wasn't about him. It was about her character, her needs, her revenge, different things as well. So it wasn't necessarily revolving around the male lead in this at all. I think it was a good part for her. And I think it was proactive in that sense for sure. Now, on the other side of this, we are looking to Michael to say, you know what, as a heist movie and as something that could be categorized as one of the better or best, The Italian Job just does not fit. So, Michael, tell us why.
Well, as Robin noted, it's not, she doesn't consider it the best. She just considers it one of her favorites. For me, it's not necessarily the worst. It's just, for me, very bland and uninteresting. And in a genre that includes The Sting, that includes Heat, that includes the original Italian Job, and one that includes the remake of Ocean's 11, which is probably, I would say, maybe the best post 2000 heist movie.
Which I have to say was Robin. Robin also put that in her list too. So that was another one she did. So that was definitely in there too. So but this one did match on that. So continue.
So you have these phenomenal heist movies. There's more than that. That's just off the top of my head. When you bring in the Italian Job to me doesn't even match up with, say, Gone in 60 Seconds, again, the remake, which came out in 2000. To me, the Italian Job, and I would say the Italian Job is a more, it holds together as like just an objective technical piece of work than Gone in 60 Seconds. But I think as a piece of entertainment, it falls apart because it just is so much more generic, takes so many fewer risks. It just feels like you took kind of the car antics of Gone in 60 Seconds and the heist and character antics of Ocean's 11, mushed them together in some studio office and said, okay, who can we get that's hot right now? Well, that Seth guy, he's in the Austin Powers movies. He's no longer on a TV show. We can get him in here as the nerd, and he'll just, he'll be the nerd, and he'll say nerd things that don't really have any, that aren't comprehensible at all.
Right.
And that's kind of how the whole movie just feels very built in a meeting where a bunch of executives were trying to think up how they could make the next Ocean's 11. And honestly, even though I'm not a huge fan of it, I would rather watch Ocean's 12 again than watch the Italian Job.
Now that's really harsh.
For the simple fact that it takes risks and it makes interesting decisions. Do they all work? No. But I would rather watch a movie that does take risks and doesn't just make another bland heist film. And quite frankly, I mean, I can't think of anything good about this movie that doesn't come with some negative baggage.
Right.
On the one hand, you have, let's see, I did make notes of this because I literally watched this today for the first time since 2004. But Edward Norton should be a total steal here. Unfortunately, this is Edward Norton filling out his contract. He had, I believe, a 3-movie deal with Paramount at the time, starting with Primal Fear. And he didn't want to do this. And you can tell the entire time that he did not want to be there. And he winds up just being kind of this lame, douchey guy who is never really better than anyone else. He just kind of manages to trick everyone in the opening segment. And then from there, even when he does manage some sort of triumph, like when he realizes that Charlize Theron is Donald Sutherland's daughter, it's only because she slips up in the dumbest possible way that he could possibly even get that. Otherwise, If it wasn't for that and his neighbors having a party, he would be completely screwed in the second act. So you have a bad villain who just doesn't have a good performance behind him, period.
I feel like the whole character was just the mustache. Like that was it.
And the soul patch.
Yeah, and really, if he was into it, I feel like Edward Norton shows more of his face when he cares. I feel like he's just covering up to go, you know what, I guess I am in this movie, but it's not really me. Surprise,
right.
His performance didn't exactly bother me because he just seemed really annoyed the whole time, like a bad guy. He was disagreeable, so I felt the way I was supposed to him, which was he was disagreeable. Did he play a stupid character? Yeah, and most heist movies don't have. If you tried to replicate those heists in real life, they're not going to happen.
And I agree. My problem, I guess, is if you go back to Ocean's 11, and I forgot his name, but Andy Garcia's character is not necessarily like the kind of villain who you think is going to go toe-to-toe in a fight, even with George Clooney. He's not necessarily the brightest guy in the world. He's not stupid, but he's not like hyper intelligent. He's not a villain, which you definitely don't need in a heist movie by any means. But
He wasn't even the bad guy because he was the guy getting robbed.
True. Yes.
Yeah, but he was sleeping with Danny Ocean's wife.
Yeah, but that doesn't make him a bad guy either.
He's the antagonist. Let me put it that way.
He's only the antagonist because he was antagonized. Like, that's my issue with that too. This is the whole Karate Kid. You know, was Ralph Macchio really the jerk in the beginning because he's the one who picked fights and made these things happen? Or
right. And what I'm saying is, as the antagonist, whether or not he is, more relatable than Danny Ocean or not, and whether or not he is a villain even, as an antagonist, he is interesting to watch. He puts in a really good performance. He's someone that you want to watch. He's someone that you think could potentially, figure out Danny's plan. Again, is he some super villain? No. Is he definitely going to decimate our heroes? No. But he has more of a threat to him just by virtue of seemingly being fairly competent. Yeah. I never got Edward Norton being competent. I just got, he managed to, get one on our heroes once. Yeah. And then he killed Donald Sutherland because you need us to want to see him go down, which quite frankly, the revenge plot just makes it so much worse because it just shows that there's not much there in the heist. There's, it's this very, again, by the numbers, we need the characters to all want this guy taken down. So he kills the oldest one. That brings Charlize into the mix because, of course, she can't be part of the original gang.
By the way, let's say Donald Sutherland, he deserves to have named. He's not the oldest one. Donald Sutherland deserves to be named.
I named him once. I'm not gonna,
anytime Donald Sutherland deserves to be named.
The character that I'm sure was supposed to be played by Michael Keene gets shot. It's on one hand, it's seemingly a smart decision to have this guy not only kill the patriarch of the group, but also take all of their ideas and keep them for himself. He has the car that Jason Statham wants. He has the speaker system that Seth Green wants. He has all their stuff when they find him. And that's reasonably intelligent. That's a good idea to get everyone on the same side. But for a heist movie, just like you don't necessarily need a big supervillain, you don't need everyone to be on like the revenge track. They want money. It's not that fucking complicated. And so, I feel like it makes the main threat, Edward Norton, just seem like more of this, kid playing dress up, not getting enough of charisma to move past his, awful, stupid soul patch.
Yeah.
And beyond that, you just have a lot of lame jokes. I mean, it's a lot of, Jason Statham is sexy, so he can just charm anyone, whether it be this cable lady or the cop who pulls him over at the end, which, speaking of women in movies, I'm glad Charlize got a strong role because no other woman did in this movie.
Well, that's true, but compared to most heist movies, it's still a stronger female role. And
I agree.
If you look at the original Italian Job, basically the women are all sent up to Michael Caine's room to welcome him home after he gets out of prison. I mean, they're eye candy. They're just there.
Right. It's all Cannonball Run-ish. We're just putting them in
and
here.
Certainly, and I agree, and I think that there is a lot of restraint shown as far as I guess the skin factor. There's not really even like there's plenty of opportunity when Jason Statham seduces the cable woman. Plenty of opportunity to show her like in lingerie or whatever, but all I think you see is like her back in the mirror as he's getting up, and that's great. I think that there is there are times when the restraint this movie shows is very good, and that's one of them. But there's other times when, like in the middle of the action sequences or the character motivation where the restraint is just kind of more blandness being, it's more mayonnaise on top of the mayonnaise. I like mayonnaise, but I don't just want a bowl full of mayonnaise.
Right.
And that's what it feels like. And, you add in all the awful humor. Seth Green is completely disserviced by this movie. We've seen him be very funny. And even there's the scene where Jason Statham is doing his whole seduction thing and Seth Green is improvising this dialogue between him and the woman. And that's really good. Unfortunately, it's, I think, the only time he gets to improvise. The rest of it is awful technobabble and jokes about how nerds be nerds, yo. And the fucking Napster gag too. I hate the Napster gag.
But you know what,
it's so
though?
lame.
You hate it even more now because it's so antiquated. But you have to remember this was 2003, and this was a PG-13 movie, which in 2003 is different than a PG-13 movie now. I feel we can get away with more now in PG-13, more blood, more language, because it's all kind of seeping into television, and then we're okay with that a little bit more. But then the sexuality thing, and like if there's too many Lego blocks, it tumbles over when it comes to the ratings scale.
I don't think it's a ratings problem. I just don't. I think that you could make a quality action film. I think you could make a quality. I mean, again, Ocean's 11. It's sure. Without. I don't remember. It's been years since I watched Ocean's 11 last, but I don't remember it being too. I don't think there's much like overt sexuality in the movie. No. But I would say it is a sexy movie. It is a movie that you look at it and you're like, God dang, that is a nice movie. That's a movie that just puts a sparkle in my eye. I don't
look at the cast. You got
exactly.
George Clooney, Brad Pitt as the Frank Sinatra, Dean Martin sort of combo. I mean, George Clooney is a pretty intimidating guy to be around, and if you're going to have somebody who wouldn't be intimidated by him, it's Brad Pitt.
Yeah.
And it's masterclass casting. It's phenomenal.
It was easy. I mean, you put all of them together, and this is the same reason we had Ocean's 12. Ocean's 12 was a movie that was based upon a tax deduction that was based upon a vacation that George Clooney wanted to have with all of his friends, so they could, hey, let's all go here. Let's go on a European trip. We'll get it signed off, and we get to have 3 months off on this yacht and these different things to happen too. So, and I think it's. Ocean's 11 is a comforting movie. It has the sexiness factors because of the characters and then people too. But just to close out the Italian Job, there was many pluses and minuses to this movie. Is it fun? Yes, it's fun, but it's fun in the same way that we are just going on a roller coaster. Like there's nothing in depth about it. We kind of have a one-note taste to a lot of what's happening here, and unfortunately, I think we kind of proved our point here by the fact that we kept on talking about other movies every time we started talking about the Italian Job when it comes to heist movies, to say that it's one of the better ones. Like, I mean, if we really thought about it and we went through a list of movies and said, okay, is this in the top 5? No. Is this in the top 10? Maybe. But we have to really define what a heist movie is and what we would define as what movies should be in that category. And I think that's kind of where we are right now. So with that in mind, I'm just going to make this. This is actually a kind of an easy one too. I feel that overall, I am going to say it's not one of the better heist movies. It is a heist movie. It's okay to watch, but it is not one that is going to define the category at all. So sorry, Robin. I know you enjoy it, and I enjoy it too. Yeah. It's one of those things that comes on TNT, and you're like, "Hey, let's watch this!" Right after Shawshank Redemption and Rocky for the 8th time in a row. But it's not going to be one of those ones where I'm going to be like, "Well, if I want to show someone a heist movie, do I show them this movie?" It's just one of the ones where I define the category by this in any means, and this is one that falls definitely farther in the back of the rain than I would probably like to admit once I start to really think about it and go into those tales. So
I'll try to live.
No, I know. I'm sorry. We try to give you the opportunity, and it's just I think I think we proved it just by talking it out that it's not one of those movies that's going to be in our top 5. I mean, so you say it's in your top 5 movies for heists. If you could think about it, or even your top 3, is it in your top 3 when you think about Heat, when you think about Ocean's 11, when you think about other things too?
I think because partly because I had that qualification of wanting to see a stronger woman character, and it does hold, say, better than Sandra Bullock. Follow up to the Oceans, whatever that was
8.
last year. Yeah.
Well, sometimes the story's just not there either way. Yeah. So that's
there's not. Oh, okay.
Oh, Robin, you're breaking up a little bit.
And then a heist movie with women. And
Michael, are you frozen? Whoops. Everyone's frozen.
Yeah, my phone just froze up.
All right, we're back. We're back. Okay, we're back. All right, we're gonna cut. We froze.
What movie did you mention, Robin?
I mentioned Widows.
That's
Widows was a good one. And Yeah.
Definitely with strong women characters, and so I appreciated it for that. But when I looked at your form, Derek, that movie didn't occur to me.
Yeah, I understand, and that's the thing where once we think about it, we go to it too. But I'm happy to have those open spaces because it's gut feelings and gut decisions. Because sometimes we just automatically know which we're not happy with and which we are happy with. So it's a good way to kind of jump off from. But like I said, I think Italian Job is not in the top five, maybe top 10, but it's going to be towards the back if it is in the top 10. And that's just because we didn't even define certain movies correctly, I guess, either. So no for the Italian Job as well. So let's just back out of here and let's close out the show right now. I want to thank you both for coming on. Before I let you go, though, really quickly, what are you watching and what should people check out right now? So Robin, let's start with you. What are you watching and what should people be checking out?
I was just on Netflix watching a teenage high school setting version of Cyrano de Bergerac called The Half of It, which I thought was actually surprisingly fun.
Loved it.
And put a little spin on the story that I preferred, which is, Cyrano falls for Roxanne because she's pretty. The same problem that he's working with Roxanne and Christiane in that play. But this one, they actually have things in common, and there's some intelligence and all that. So it's kind of a fun twist. I don't say it replaces Cyrano de Bergerac, which still has fabulous speeches and is a classic, wonderful play. But I like the spin that it took.
Yeah, definitely. And not only that, but adding the teenage angst. And it was more about not necessarily true love, more about finding yourself and hopefulness, I think, as well with that character, because it was more about the future and what the future could hold by making choices and making leaps and trying to be true to yourself. So I that's what I did enjoy about that. And the lead, of course, she was fantastic as well. So I definitely enjoyed that. Is there anything else you would like to mention?
Also on Netflix, I watched Unorthodox, which is another strong female character. I guess I'm leaning that way, and that's not always what happens with me. But just I really found the setting, the community, the people in it unique, different. Self-actualization is what this one is about, and I appreciate that kind of story theme more than Michael Bay explosions.
Sure. How about for you, Michael? What are you watching? What should people watch?
Well, on my channel, I mostly talk about physical media. I'm a big proponent of purchasing physical media and appreciating older films that might not have gotten their due. I literally just finished purchasing some films from the Vinegar Syndrome Halfway to Black Friday sale, which is sort of my biannual pilgrimage, if you will. They've just released Rad, Hal Needham's Rad on Blu-ray for the first time, which I'm very excited about.
I was going to mention that too. Yes, go for it. Yeah.
And they also just released. I was really surprised by this. I love Paul Schrader movies, and they just released Patty Hearst with an interview with Paul Schrader on the disc, which is pretty dope. And a film that I only fairly recently, I mentioned this earlier, but fairly recently started to fall in love with. Night Train to Terror just got a new slipcover. Us Blu-ray collectors, we like our slipcovers. Vinegar Syndrome is the best when it comes to slipcovers. And even though I don't always make that necessarily part of my purchases, they released the slipcover for the disc I already owned, and I bought the slipcover for $7. I still feel ashamed about it, but I don't regret it. And I highly recommend Night Train to Terror. That disc is amazing. And it's one of the earliest releases from, I think, 2014. And it features the feature-length version of the middle segment from that anthology. And it is one of the weirdest movies I've ever seen. And I don't say that positively enough. It is so wonderful. So go watch some trash. And, also there's this new movie. It's hard to find, but I think it's called The Head. It's this shot on VHS movie. It's on Amazon Prime and Vimeo on demand. Has this hot new young director. I can't think of his name or anything, but it's apparently pretty good. You got to do some searching, but definitely check out The Head from 2019. And
where was it filmed?
In beautiful Las Vegas, Nevada. I hear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I heard Mike. Yes. I heard Michael. You were on that production. You worked somewhere. You were catering or something on that one too.
I did some. I kept some of the actors going. If you catch my drift.
Definitely go check out that one, and then definitely give him a review as well. You can lift or darken his day, definitely. And then of course, if you want to do that, you can also follow him on Twitter, where he loves to start the battles. Therefore here on too. Myself, I am watching Space Force right now, which comes out next week with Steve Carell. I am actually just watched the last episode of Snowpiercer, which is on TNT, which starts very kind of rough because we have to reintroduce the whole idea of the movie and what the idea is, but it does get better as we move along. So that is one that I definitely did enjoy. And then if you get a chance, check out some other fun stuff that is online right now. I know there's a kid show called The Big Fib, which I just reviewed, where it's like a fun kid show where kids have to decide if the person is a specialist in their field or if they're a liar, and they get asked questions, and it's kind of like a fun way of doing that too. So some of these things I've done, some of these I've interviewed about or I've just talked about, but there's definitely some good things out there to watch. And then Rad from Vinegar Syndrome, I'm very happy to promote that as well. Only 50 or 60 copies of that though, I believe. So if you have it, you have it. But I have a very distinct feeling that they're already probably all gone. So.
There's actually over 500 left in stock.
Was there 500 left in stock? Okay, well maybe not. Then 500 is what it was. 500 was how many they made, and this was going to be bigger because this was something they were going to kind of coincide with during South by Southwest and show the screening before they talked about selling it and things too. So, but outside of that, let's just close up here. Michael, where can they find you? Where can they follow you?
I'm on Twitter at Michael Keene. All of the links are there, but I also have a YouTube channel where I talk about movies, trash cinema, cult, what have yous. Mostly Blu-rays, a lot of Vinegar Syndrome stuff. And you can also find out more about my filmmaking endeavors at manateeparty.com.
Fantastic. And then Robin, where can they find you?
Well, I have the robinholabird.com page. You have to spell my name right. Or also Around the World in 80 Movies. That's not Around the World in 80 Days movies. On Amazon.com, you can find a number of things. And some of my little film location projects are on YouTube. My emphasis is often movies and the locations where they filmed. That's why I was asking about Las Vegas. I always love seeing movies that filmed in Nevada.
And this is the perfect time. I'm surprised there aren't people right now looking to jump on Las Vegas Strip because it's so dead that the opportunity to create everything within these casinos right now. Of course, we still have a lot of issues about social distancing and stuff, but there are productions that are restarting here or there and trying to be safe about it. And so if we were one of the states that allowed for that, there's many opportunities to create a zombie end of the world apocalypse by the fact that there's nothing happening on the Strip and no one going down it. So it'd be pretty easy to close the whole Las Vegas Boulevard with no issue right now. So that's something for the Nevada Film Commission to definitely look at. But outside of that, I want to thank both of you very much for coming on. It was a lot of fun. We got to talk about Michael Bay, Italian Job, as well as Tenet holding its mark and its line in the sand for July 17th. So thank you again. And You're Wrong, Here's Why. Episode 8 is done. See you soon.